Hey, how's it going, YouTube? I'm back in the video, and today I'm going to be talking about how the Los Angeles Clippers could be the next super team. Now, if you are new to this channel, this is pretty much a series where I go through every single team in the NBA, explain the biggest strengths of the team, and say how they could potentially have a good season in the next coming year. Now, I do this type of video for teams like the Phoenix Suns, the New York Knicks. I've done all those type of videos for those teams, so obviously I'm not saying they're going to be a super team, but the Clippers are one of the only exceptions that they could legitimately be a super team next year. Now, like most of the teams, it's just pretty much how they could potentially be good, but this is actually a scenario where they could legitimately be titles contenders and be a super team for years to come. So yeah, I have 3 strengths I'm going to list for this video. If you do like the video at any point, hit the like button and subscribe button. It would mean the absolute world to me. And without further ado, without running on too much, let's get right into this video. Alright, so my first reason for this video is going to be they could potentially have one of the best defensive teams we have seen in an extremely long time. As I mean, just look at their starting lineup. They have a starting lineup of Patrick Beverley, Landry Shamet, Kyrie Irving, Paul George, and Montrezl Harrell. Now, I mean, obviously we know 2 of them in Kawhi Leonard, who is a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year and a 5-time All-Defensive Team player. Kawhi is one of the best defensive players we've seen of this generation, and he's just an unbelievable player offensively and defensively, and is probably almost by far the best 2-way player we've seen in at least the past 20 years. And then also you have Paul George, who is also a 4-time All-Defensive Team and was last year's steal champion, which means he leads the league in steals per game. So I mean, Paul George, another great 2-way player, and they possibly have the 2 best 2-way players in the league right now on the same team. And then even Patrick Beverley is a 2-time All-Defensive player, and Montrezl Harrell is an extremely scrappy player and plays a lot of defense, can block shots, gets a lot of defensive rebounds, can just play good defense, hard-nosed defense, is just an extremely scrappy player. And I mean, this team is probably going to be one of the best, if not the best defensive team in the league, as the duo of Kawhi and Paul George is already ridiculous, and any small forward like Durant or any of them, they're not going to be able to score with ease, as they're both big enough to guard a 4-through-1 position, and they can even stretch down to guarding some centers. So I mean, them 2 combined are already one of the best defensive teams you can have. If they were the only 2 good defensive players on this team, they would still be an extremely good defensive team. But then you also add Patrick Beverley, who's known as to be one of the best defensive point guards in the entire league. He's extremely physical, extremely scrappy, and plays extremely smart defense, and I mean, he's very hard to score on. And with them 3 combined, those are by far the 3 main defenders on the team, I think you can definitely say it's going to be very hard to guard him, because Patrick Beverley can stop any point guard in the league, at least slow any point guard in the league down. Paul George and Kawhi can guard every single player in the league. Montrezl Harrell is extremely physical. Really, the only kind of weak spot on defense is Landry Shamet, and there is really no reason to have 5 lockdown defenders on your starting 5. It's nice to have 1 pure scorer, which Landry Shamet is. He's a very good shooter and a very good scorer, but he can also play defense. It's not like he's a bad defender. It's just he's a better offensive player than defender, and he's really like the only player that is kind of built like that is offense first then defense, while Kawhi and Paul George are pretty much, their offensive and defensive games are so good, it doesn't really matter what they're doing on that given night. And Patrick Beverley is a defensive player before a offensive player for sure, and same with Montrezl Harrell. So I think for sure this team is going to be one of the hardest teams to score on, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the teams that rely on offense extremely hard, like the Houston Rockets, how they're going to fare playing against a team this talented, and on defense at least. But now my second reason is going to be their bench is extremely strong as well, as I mean, obviously they have Lou Williams, who's a multi-6 man of the year and would be an all-star player if he was a starter, and he could easily start if they didn't want him coming off the bench. But I mean, Lou Williams, by far one of the best scorers to ever play off the bench, one of the best bench players to ever come into the NBA, period. And I mean, they don't only have Lou Williams, they also have players that are extremely talented and very good role players in Zubac, JaMychal Green, Maurice Harkless, and Jerome Robertson. Jerome Robertson's a nice young player who's had a pretty solid year last year. Maurice Harkless, he can play defense pretty good. JaMychal Green's a good vet to have, and Zubac's a nice young player that is still developing in this league. So their bench is still extremely strong, led by Lou Williams, obviously. And I mean, when you have a bench that has an all-star level player player on it to go along with other nice role players, it is extremely hard to go when you're, so just think, teams are going to be getting beat up by the starting lineup defensively, plus their starting lineup can also score pretty easily with Paul George and Kawhi on the team. So I mean, offensively and defensively, the other team's starting lineup is going to have a handful, and then imagine you having to go, right once they start like subbing out, the Clippers start subbing out, and you finally think you're going to get a break, now you have to deal with Lou Williams, Zubac, and a very good bench. That's going to be extremely hard to deal with, and I can't see many teams being able to take it, especially when the Clippers are on their game and are like actually playing at their full potential. But now my third reason is going to be that they have one of the best duos in the entire league, as last year they were both potential MVP candidates at any point of the year. Paul George was considered an MVP candidate midway through the year, and Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs, if the playoffs counted towards MVP races and stuff, Kawhi probably would have won that MVP trophy. So I mean, when you put that two together, when you put two MVP candidates at the caliber of play that they both play at, it's going to be almost extremely hard to stop them both on any given night. And if they're both playing to their full potential, if they're both on any given night, it is going to be extremely hard to stop them. And even if only one of them is playing good and the other one's having a lacking night, it's still going to be extremely hard to beat them, because I mean, really, no matter how bad they're playing offensively, they're still going to be good defensively. So not pretty much every night, barring any injuries, their defensive game is going to be there. But now say that one night Kawhi is just not scoring, he's not having a good offensive night, he's missing shots he would usually make. Well, Paul George is a very good offensive player, one of the best offensive players in the league. Like I said, he's also one of the best two-way players. He might be the second best two-way player in the league, Paul George, and he might be able to pick up the slack, and same vice versa if Paul George was struggling on offense. So I think this team is just built to the point to where it's going to be extremely hard for teams to score on them, and teams like the Houston Rockets, where they have James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and Doug Anthony as their coach, and they're by far most reliant on their offensive game, they're going to struggle immensely when they're trying to beat the Los Angeles Clippers, because now you put Paul George on Russell Westbrook and Kawhi Leonard on James Harden, and then Patrick Beverley on Eric Gordon. Well, how are you going to beat that exactly? Because Montrezl Harrell and Clint Capella, that matchup is pretty much a wash. Paul George on Russell Westbrook, that's pretty much a wash. I would maybe give the edge to Paul George. Kawhi Leonard on James Harden, they're equally as good. That's a wash. But then you have Landry Shamet on probably Eric Gordon, I would assume. That's a wash. And then where the Houston Rockets kind of hurt is their bench. And where the Clippers do not hurt is their bench. So I think the Clippers are going to just be able to beat up on teams like the Rockets who rely on their offense, and like teams like the Pelicans as well. Obviously the Pelicans nowhere near as talented as the Houston Rockets or the Clippers, but teams like the Pelicans and Rockets, who are extremely reliant on offense, are going to struggle a lot, and that's going to be a very big theme going throughout the entire year, because pretty much every team in the NBA is reliant on their offense more than their defense right now. So the Clippers are kind of breaking the mold, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this does work. And I think the Clippers have potential to be one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NBA coming up. It's going to be between them and the Lakers, in my opinion, and I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how those two teams compete and who's better, and if the Clippers' defensive mindset can be enough to win them championships. As a lot of people say, defense wins championships, offense just sells tickets. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how those theories are combined, and I think it's going to be a very fun season to watch. But unfortunately, guys, that's going to be it for this video. So comment below. Do you agree with me? Do you think the Clippers could be a potential super team? Do you think that I missed any reasons? Do you think I'm wrong? On your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you did like the video at any point, hit the like button and subscribe button. It means the absolute world to me. And I hope you have a blessed day. Can I have a blessed day? So you need to have a blessed day. See you in the next video. Goodbye. Boo. Blah.